we're going to talk a little bit about just this committee in general as we start. And so that'll get us in just a couple more minutes until we get really into the meat of some of the questions that a lot of people had about this program. But kind of introduce who's on here tonight. If you don't know us, I'll let everyone introduce themselves, but I'm Caleb Boardman, Executive Director for the ABGA. Tyler?
I'm Tyler Sparks. I'm the Director of Region 11 for the ABGA, and I'm also the Chair of the Registered Weather and Commercial Doe Committee.
Danielle?
Hi, I'm Danielle Funk, and I'm on the Doe and the Registered Weather Committee.
I'm Bailey Burgum, and I'm also on the Registered Weather and Weather Dam Committee. Hopefully we've put together some good tools in this committee. I know we've all been putting a lot of time in to hopefully make this a success.
So this is obviously the program that people are going to get on, watch about, have questions on right now, but do want to highlight just committees in general. And as we start this, we'll kind of hit on what this committee's purpose is and where this kind of program came from. But, you know, every year after the July face-to-face meeting, the board of directors are going to come up with a set of committees and assign those committees some tasks to work on. At the time, it was called Registered Weathers and Commercial Does. We'll talk in here some changes and some updates that we have made through that. But Tyler was appointed as chair of this committee. And so Tyler kind of talked about, at that point, I guess it was President Mike Reese kind of set the committee expectations and things to accomplish through the year, and what was kind of the purpose of this committee.
So the purpose originally was to identify partnership opportunities with some of the commercial and weather type breeders out there. And when I say that, I mean the weather type breeders that are breeding the fancy show type weathers and weather dams, as well as the regular meat goat farmer that is selling their goat at the sale barn for slaughter.
All right, very good. So some things that this committee has changed that obviously some people may not even be aware of, but I think are relevant to some people, to our members out there. These changes are highlighted in the February minutes is when all of these changes were passed. So if you have questions, there's some nice attachments to the February minutes on our ABGA website. But Rule 206 is discussing listing papers and what can show, and we reduced, this committee voted to, at the board, I'm sorry, the committees have no voting power. That's another thing to understand. We'll discuss that process a little bit as we go through the night, but the committees come up with suggestions or proposals, but a committee has no power. They take those suggestions to the board, and then the board ultimately votes on things. And as you can see here tonight, board member is who is the chair of each committee, but non-board members of the ABGA in good standing are welcome to apply to be on committees. And speaking of that, Tyler, why don't we highlight real quick who the other committee members are that aren't with us tonight, because they put in a lot of work too.
Right. So we have BJ Carbino, Levi Dale, Catherine Riley, Wade Rogers, Will Carbino, Casey Landon, Chris Fleming, and then the four of us that are here. I also want to point out with that, Caleb, I know that some of these committees are huge and have had a lot of interest over the years, and there's always people that want to be on those, and sometimes not everybody gets to make those committees. That was not the case with the Registered Weather and Commercial Doe Committee. The other task that we were given was to lay the groundwork for the future of this committee. So at the time, it was myself, Chuck Fitzwater, and Casey McLean. And one thing that we talked about, it was kind of an all hands on deck thing, and we needed as many good opinions as we could get on this topic to lay that foundation and get a good start. So everybody that applied to this committee was allowed on, and we even picked up a couple pretty valuable members after that. So.
Yeah, I think good point on that. And committees are listed and who the chairs are on our website if you're curious out there on what committees are out there even. And if you're curious on wanting to get involved next year, again, those will open up typically end of July, first part of August, will be when those committees are assigned. And then the application to be on those committees at that point. So some things that were updated, Rule 206 is a listing paper rule, and that was voted to lower the percentage required by a weather to be classified as a papered or registered weather. If one of you guys want to hit on that a little bit. All at once.
Bailey, you want to get that one?
So as I'm reading along on what we're talking about, so refresh me on where we're at here.
So,
The I'm sorry. I was trying, as much as I was trying to follow along, I had some questions already coming in on my phone. So
that's okay. That's okay. So I'll take this one. So the registered weathers are 6.25% can now show in the registered weather division. And that's something that the registered weather division there at Nationals is something that we kind of worked on as a committee to be able to change some things and try to increase the registered weather deal. The long-term goal is to try to work with some national shows eventually to try to give some awards from ABGA on like highest placing, registered weathers, etc. And that's kind of a little bit of foundation on where we started talking about this native on appearance program to be able to get in there. And that's where the 12.5%, as you'll follow along through the night, we'll talk about 6.25% as a registered weather would allow you to register a weather out of a native on appearance doe and be able to show that and try to increase participation for our juniors that may be raising some things on that side. And then the big rule change that we'll talk about through the night is Rule 207. We did add the native on appearance. A couple other highlights that we want to change is we did change the name of, or the board voted to accept the committee's recommendations of changing the name of the commercial doe show to weather dams. It was not a unanimous vote. There was some good discussion on the board about the original purpose of the commercial dam or the commercial doe division, and maybe how that's evolved over time, and how probably towards most shows and most industry kind of show ring non-papered side of things, those kind of non-papered does are geared more towards weathers. And so we renamed that to weather dams from commercial does. We also changed then how they would be classified. And so right now it's classified by 3 different divisions, and going through the regional shows, it'll stay that way. This will be updated at nationals. But right now it was milk teeth was division 1, 2-tooth was division 2, and 4-tooth and older was division 3. At these regional shows, or if you've been to nationals in the past, that really caused a big discrepancy in numbers across those divisions. And obviously there was significantly more does in division 1. And so what the board decided to do was to do 2 divisions of milk teeth, a lightweight milk tooth and a heavyweight milk tooth division, and then 2-tooth and older being together. So those age does still have an opportunity not to have to compete against the young does, and vote was to not go strictly by weight and get rid of mouthing them at all, but to keep mouthing them to kind of keep those older ones, etc. So weather dams, that is a sheet term as well. It's kind of crossover because that's what we call market weathers on both sides. So a good question there, but some places, some national shows do just call them commercial does. Some places call them weather dams, but that was a change that was made. Then at nationals, Tyler, why don't you hit on some of the stuff we'll do with the registered weathers with their own division, some of the additional awards we'll have for this side of things that this committee came up with?
Yeah. And so before we get into the registered weather side, I would actually like to touch on those weather dams in that deal, we have added an incentive for the highest placing registered weather dam. And so that weather dam could be 8th or 9th in class, but if she's registered and she's the highest placing registered weather dam in the class, she will be awarded first place for that class, separately as the registered one. So then when you get into the weathers, traditionally it's been 3 divisions. And I actually was told that this has happened before, maybe back when they started the registered weather deal. But anyways, what we decided to do this year was to add a 4th division to that, and the 4th division will be registered weathers. Champion and reserve registered weather will come out of that. So it'll be overall champion and overall reserve registered weathers. And then those 2 animals, along with 3 others, will be the top 5 in Division 4, and then they will go back to the overall drive to compete for overall weather, top five overall weathers. And the other things that we have added with that are the Premier Exhibitor and the Premier Breeder Awards on the commercial side. And I guess one thing that the committee thought was that the way that we have set up this Premier Exhibitor Award, that kind of gives some of those registered weathers in that 4th division, the higher placing ones, a little better shot at that Premier Exhibitor Award, along with some of the other things where maybe previously they wouldn't have had those opportunities.
I'd like to add something about the registered weather dams, because I'm sure there's going to be some confusion with that statement. It's important to realize that weather dams are going to be judged very differently than our atypical ABGA goats. So this gives those different style goats a little more purpose and more place. This is not necessarily your throwaway ABGA goats. This is a variety of all types and kinds. So I think it's important that we recognize that those are still high valued animals. We've just given them more purpose.
Right. We're not changing the makeup of the show. It will be the same commercial or weather dam show that it's always been. It'll be the same goats that they've been looking for the past several years. We're just saying that, I mean, some of the talk we had on that deal was that, well, that it should be more of a commercial doe, like Bailey was talking earlier. The thing is, we're allowing you to show your registered animals that have call faults in that division. And you don't have a place to do that in the open deal. It's just in the juniors. So we want those kids to have a place to put them, but that's not necessarily what it's designed around. And then the same thing with a smaller, slower growing registered female. That's a nice place to put those, and we've added that incentive to kind of help with that, so those kids are still having a chance to win. When, I mean, honestly, last year and years prior, those commercial does that just had call faults didn't really have a chance.
Yes, that's the highlight by having the highest placing registered one through that division. And so that's a highlight to kind of share that with those kids, and just another opportunity for an award into
Right.
them. So that'll kind of take us to this, I think, a good transition to this Native on Appearance program and what people are on here to talk about. And we put it out on March 31st and it caused quite the stir there on Facebook. Obviously, we realized that, and I think I'm fairly fresh and new to the ABGA, but I'd have to say maybe one of the most engaging Facebook posts and announcements of in the history of our Facebook page there, with the amount of comments that we got. And so we know people were passionate about it and maybe misunderstanding it as much as anything. And, you know, we want this to be, this program was designed by this committee, and the board unanimously approved this on the February board meeting after hearing the full part of that, as this program is designed to provide new opportunities. The last thing the program was designed to do was decrease the integrity of the breed, take away from our registered stock, try to say that we're catering towards the weather breeders only, and that's the way we're headed. Some of those things, that is not the intention of this board, this committee. The intention of this committee is to try to bridge the gap and give more opportunities for commercial weather type breeders. But that is a small subsection of this program leading into that, from the entire purpose of the ABGA, which is obviously to preserve the boar goat. And we'll discuss how in our viewpoints that this native on appearance is not going to water things down. It's not going to decrease our, the integrity of the herd book, anything like this. Got a question on why I wasn't voted on members. I'll hit on these so you guys know we go through. We have that. We're going to talk about that as we go through. Actually, it's our first question, but I want to hit on the native on appearance, a couple things before we get to that. Before we get really into some tough questions, we're going to kind of go through again, what's the purpose of the program? What's the registration steps? What are some information about these? Hopefully some people on watching might be interested in this. So I'm going to share a screen and walk through just kind of the purpose of this particular native on appearance deal. This is kind of summarized online. You can get on our website and see this. Let's see here. Get it transitioned over. Hopefully everyone can see this now. So again, implemented there on April 1st, which maybe caused some even extra confusion about this, but this is the actual rule that is in here. And so does otherwise ineligible for registration or record of pedigree that have the appearance of a boar goat will be eligible for native on appearance. So that's one of the biggest things that I want to highlight right here at the beginning of this, is that these does are ineligible for registration. So this is native on appearance, and we'll probably overemphasize this through the night. But this is essentially, think of it like a listing paper that gets extra, but you get a percentage added onto it. So this is not going in as a percentage in the percentage herd book. It will be in our database on iCompete, so that way you can register kids out of them in the future. But it is not in as a registration, and we'll hit on about the showing part of it. So one thing is that to submit these, you can do it through iCompete. We have a little scribe step-by-step video you can watch on how to go through iCompete and do this, but you will be able to submit a full body profile picture of a doe that has been submitted, showing the doe's full body picture. Oh, they say it's too blurry to read. Sorry, Linda, I don't know. I can try to maximize and see if that helps any. I'll try to summarize as I go through this. But that full body picture is what we need to show the total body picture. And I'll show some examples here. It is a $20 application fee that has to be paid before the staff will review it. And it was voted that that fee will not be reimbursed just because of the time that it takes to go through and do that. So, if you want to try to be sarcastic and put some different pictures on there, know that it's going to cost you $20 and you're not going to get your fee reimbursed. I know some people will legitimately put it in, but just, it is going to cost on the application. Bucks and wethers are not eligible. It is for does only. We wanted to do that. And if approved, they will get a 12.5% boar goat breed composition. They will be given an ABGA listing number starting with the NOA. One thing to note is date of birth is not required. And the reason that is because you may not be able to prove it, right? If you go buy a non-registered animal from a breeder, maybe they told you the date of birth, maybe they didn't. And so that the date of birth is not required. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in some questions. Members can upload 2 pictures. One picture, again, has to be from the profile that clearly shows the body, legs, head, ears, and horns. You can upload up to 2 pictures, but the photo must be of one animal only. So to show some pictures here, again, this is on our website that you can look at. Some photos that the animals are in just by themselves that we can see very clearly the full profile of those pictures. Some pictures that wouldn't be accepted, not because as far as the does not being accepted, we would just say we can't review this at this time. Please submit a new picture. Would be any of these examples. We can't see the full body on this picture laying down, can't see the profile, multiple animals in there, multiple animals in, several of these. This one of just the single animal, if you can see that, what I'm highlighting of the doe being shown, the reason why that wouldn't be accepted as a standalone picture would be because we can't see the ears and the face of that doe. So that's some pictures to look at. Characteristics to be evaluated. The doe must express visual characteristics of the boar breed. Right now, so we have a question right now. I have a dapple. Will they be eligible? Dapples can be percentages. Dapples can be in our full blood herd book right now. So yes, while the traditional boar goat is red-headed with a white body, and that will obviously have a really positive weighing on the review process if they are the traditional color. We are not going to discriminate based solely off of color. As we look at that, it'll be taken into consideration of where other breeds may be come in. So appearance indicating influence of pygmy, myotonic, Kiko, Spanish, or dairy breeds will disqualify the animal from being listed as native on appearance. We are not doing these to be, cull faults or to what I would say like the full breed standard. Just as we could have a full blood doe that has a folded ear and not be show correct or have pigment issues or incorrect bite and still be in our herd book, we are not going to not allow these animals to get a native on appearance listing paper by doing that. And that's a answer we'll probably touch on it again later, on how why we aren't going to visually make a judge visually inspect them. And so they've got a question just in on that right now. Why are they not? So Terry just asked a question. Do we want to jump in on that? That's kind of one of our first questions. We'll get to a couple of your questions. Let us get through just a couple more things here, and then we'll start getting some questions that are coming in. So here's some examples of some approved NOA does. Good horn shapes, strong boar skull, shape to their head, different color patterns on here, just as we see within our actual registry base. Some examples of unapproved and what I'll train the staff on is, Spanish influence or different shapes of horns that don't have the boar shape to their horns, ear set specifically. So even though this one is boar colored, this is a question we've had. What about a La Mancha boar cross? This goat right here could actually be registered. Theoretically, we could pretend that this one could be actually a 50% in our herd book, because if this is a true F1 cross, boar goat La Mancha straight up cross, full blood on a La Mancha, this right here would be in our could very easily be in our registry base at 50%. Obviously, could not be shown, but could be in our registry base at 50%. We actually would not allow that in on our native on appearance design. Last thing to talk about is our approval process. Again, can be submitted online, email, or hard copy into the office. A registration clerk is going to review this. Office staff will review the application and pictures to make sure everything's uploaded and submitted correctly. The registration clerk will give an initial approval or denial of the application. And right now, this is still up for some discussion here on the committee we discussed last night. But the way it's approved right now is for the first month of applications. I, as executive director, will review all decisions, mainly to help train the staff to make sure that they're looking at the right things and use it as a training process. After the probational period, if an application is denied, it will automatically come to me for a second review and give a final decision on it. If it is denied, there will be a reason given to the member on why it was denied, explaining what was off on that. One thing I am going to touch on briefly is we did make an update. We were looking on Facebook, and through this, one of the updates that is in here is we did take Savannah out. We had some discussion, and it is part, Savannah being kind of white-headed boar goat into there would come in and be able to probably, most likely, not guaranteed, but could very likely qualify into that. Again, Bailey, you want to hit on that a little bit on the Savannah side as a judge, and how, it's hard to distinguish and why we took that out, maybe, if you don't mind.
It definitely is hard to distinguish some of those breed characteristics with that specific breed. They do have some curvature to their skull. We have several registered boer goats that are solid white at this point and show a lot of those similar characteristics. So separating those two breeds is going to be near impossible, I would say, at this stage in the game. So I think it's only fair that we acknowledge that they are very similar and acceptable.
The last thing I'm going to share, and then we'll start getting into some questions that we saw pretty commonly on Facebook, as well as some of the questions that are coming in here. Let's make sure I'm sharing it correctly onto here. This is roundabout what's with some changes right now that we continue to work through this, and with I Compete, that if you put in a native on appearance going forward, this is what you're going to be receiving. And so one thing that we want to see is it does not show certificate of registration up top. Your paper will very clearly state native on appearance, and it will not be a registration number. Some things that we're cleaning up right now is that it's going to say listing number, and on the classification, it's not going to be percentage or full blood. The classification is native on appearance. The other thing compared to our general registration papers is I've got this yellow box highlighted over here, and that's the breeder. There's not going to be a breeder listed because we can't prove who the breeder is. So it will only be an owner at this point. The breeder will not be listed on there. So that's kind of the process through there. If you have questions about the actual registration process, now's a good time to ask, or anything we've talked about. We will for sure hit questions as we go through here that are in, and start talking about some other ones that we saw commonly on Facebook. So I'll kind of start letting them talk a little bit more. One of the things that we're going to let Bailey maybe jump in a little bit on that, I would say one of the more, I don't know if it was common questions or concerns, was USBGA kind of had this same program, and at one point in time, ABGA wouldn't accept those in. And why are we going back, and are we making the same mistakes that USBGA did? Bailey, maybe talk about the benefits from your personal perspective of when you got involved with Native on Experience. And then secondly, talk about how this is different and how it's still kind of protecting the breed integrity by doing what we're doing rather than maybe what was done in that situation.
Yeah, so this is definitely a different approach to the same concept. And I will say one thing, I believe starting at a lower percentage at our 12.5 is definitely maybe the upside to how it's different. USBGA, you automatically received 50% papers, which allowed you to show and as a beginner that started in a 4-H program, we had access to several commercial herds, but there was no paper trail. And even those breeders, you know, they certainly wanted to help us, but it was hard to progress forward without the Native on Appearance program. To be honest, I don't know that I would have goats if it weren't for the ability to get into the registry and access more shows outside of our local shows. So I think it's great as a beginning tool, or anybody that just maybe you don't have the money to buy from these registered herds just yet and you want to build something for yourself. There's a lot of different ways you can view that, but the 12.5%, keeping you out of the registry, but still giving you obviously a little bit of leadway there. I think it's fair to individuals that if you take a picture of a goat, if it looks a little bit like a Boer goat, there's a good chance it's at least 12.5% Boer. You know, we certainly don't want to get into complications with our registry by having a higher percentage. So I think that's where this is a good starting point, and I think it's going to help a variety of individuals. I know we've talked about the market side of the industry. You see how many young people purchase commercial goats now to show in the Weather Dam series. This gives them another avenue to be able to market their goats. Maybe they've grown up in the registered industry, but they wanted to participate in the market side for the Junior Point series. This gives them the ability to kind of incorporate those goats back into their registered herd. So I think it's a great opportunity, especially for the juniors, but really anybody. USBGA had its own issues outside of what some may believe to be the Native on Appearance. I've spoke to several of the OGs of the time, and yes, I'm sure there was some friction over this topic. I know when the USBGA fell down, there was some frustration in trying to transfer those animals to the ABGA, but here we still are. I think we've made some strong decisions along the way. So I think it's time. The industry's changed. It's not the same now as it was 15 years ago. And I think we need to be aware of that and be open-minded to the fact that we may need to change our thought process a little bit to open up some of these opportunities. I know there's several dispersals that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years that maybe some of those papers weren't transferred over. This is another option you can go with to maybe get those animals back into the registry. So I could go on and on, but I'll kind of wrap that up there.
And Bailey, you were talking about there, it's kind of an incentive for those kids that have grown up in the registered side of things, and it's a little bit of an opportunity for them to play the other side. It's the same can be said the other way. If you have grown up in the register or the weather or the commercial side, this is an incentive to come in and join us. And again, that's the job and the purpose of this committee is to try to bridge that gap if we can.
So with that, let's talk. I'm gonna maybe Tyler, Danielle, if you want to tackle why was 12.5% decided on? Terry had a comment on here on Facebook. Was it determined as half of the required 25% to show, you know, kind of walk what the committee's process was to get to that 12.5?
Do you want me to go, Danielle? Okay. I think Bailey touched on that pretty good. 12.5%. I mean, it was half of what the percentage requirement is for the percentage does, and it was enough to still keep them out of the registry while giving them an incentive with this listing paper.
So with that, I'm going to jump right into now Callie's question that just came in, because I think that one fits in right here, as well as Cameron's question that came in. So Callie, hit yours. If you have a native on appearance doe and a full blood buck, would that baby be able to be registered at any percentage? That baby is able to come in at, Tyler, you tell me, 56.25%. So rather than it being a boar X, and you would breed a full blood to a boar X, that's going to give you 50%. This is going to give you that extra 6.25%, essentially that first generation. And that 6.25, it doesn't accumulate every generation you go through. It just kind of stays in 6.25% greater. And Cameron, that's kind of the benefit. You can still choose to just do a listing paper. We still do offer listing papers. In reality, I'll be, just call a spade is cheaper, right? You can get a listing paper because we just need the information submitted. We don't need to review that. It doesn't take as much staffing time. It didn't take kind of a build out of this new program and be able to accept pictures onto this, etc. And so that is why we wanted to do it, was to start people in as a percentage, and now they have that kind of added percentage to start going in. Without, the committee felt very adamant that we did not want to allow them to show and to take away from breeders that have bred for years and years to keep those. And maybe purposely we're trying to breed to a percentage to not let someone just come in and get that advantage. So that's really, the thought process behind it. And again, we want to emphasize this a lot, is this is not a requirement. No one has to do this. It's a very voluntary program. And so that kind of hits that.
And I would like to touch on that, Caleb. So while you can register that first one when bred to a full blood buck at 56 1/4, if you do the math on up, you're reaching the purebred status at the same rate as if you bred a full blood to a boar X at 0%. So it's the people that are worried about watering down the breed or diluting anything. That's where I'm at with that. And then by the time you get to that 94, the percentages that you're gaining each step of the way are small.
So again, they won't show. Again, hit Linda's here. And I know a few people have asked questions we're going to come back to. Are these only going to be shown at nationals? So they won't ever be shown as a registered goat. As far as our shows go, the only place they could ever show at would be at a junior sanctioned show that has commercial or weather dam type. So a regional show series and the national show, they would be able to show just as a boar X or a 0% doe would be able to. They will not be able to right now be able to be shown at an ABGA sanctioned show. Let's jump into one that's, I think, very commonly asked on Facebook and on our original post, and at least twice tonight already. Why was this not voted on by the members? Tyler, as a board member and as a committee chair, walk us through a little bit on why it's structured that way through the bylaws, and why the members did not, again, just in reality, get to vote on this. It was right. A board vote.
And it's a fairly straightforward thing, to be honest with you. And I would like to start by, I think that I have been one of the more vocal about member transparency and clarity to the membership. I want the members to be aware, and I was actually shocked when some of these members weren't aware just as many times as we talked about it. But that being said, bylaw changes are things that we ask the membership to vote on. Rule changes are not. Just the straightforward answer is I hope the people in my region trust me enough to vote in their interest and not mine. That's why they elected me to this position. So as far as the rule change, and on that rule change, the post that I made this week said that it was a unanimous vote. It was not a unanimous vote. I went back and checked that.
Oh, I was wrong. Sorry.
The only thing that wasn't unanimous is I did abstain from it personally, just because I didn't want anybody to feel like I was pushing an agenda or my own thing here. I fully back this thing, and I want it to be free and clear of drama.
Okay, very good. So one thing I will just point out on this is, as executive director, I am going to be someone that wants to hear from the membership as well. I highly ask the membership to participate when you're given the opportunity. We sent out a survey a few weeks ago, and granted, it was mainly about the national show, and I know that a very small percentage of our membership shows, and so maybe that's why we had a small response rate. But across the members that were sent that survey, we had 2% of the members respond to that survey. And so I just encourage you, hopefully a lot of you on here are probably the ones that are active and do that. But, you know, when you get the opportunity to speak out and give your opinion. I know they're probably not the most enlightening or fun things to watch on a Tuesday night, but board meetings are live streamed and they're recorded, so you can go back. We are starting to post the agendas now. So the Friday before the board meeting is, we'll post a link to it. So tomorrow there's a board meeting next Tuesday. Tomorrow there will be a Facebook post and announcement on our website about that, and we will make sure and put the agenda on there. The proposed agenda, it obviously has to get accepted, but that gives you an idea. And if you see something on there that's interesting or you're wondering about, that's the time to call your board of director, ask them, what's this about? What do we need to know? How are you going to vote on it? That's kind of the way the board is structured to work to govern the association.
And don't be afraid to call us. That's what we are here for. My phone number is posted everywhere. Most of your directors, probably all of your directors, are going to answer or call you back if you call them. If they don't call me, that's literally our job. We want to hear from you and get feedback. A lot of times I'm not gonna get on Facebook and respond to some of this stuff because we're gonna touch on it later. But I do see a lot of it, and I try to reach out to everybody that I can to get your perspective and to help you to understand ours. But give us a call.
Verifying age. Danielle, you want to hit on that one?
There's no good way to verify the age. And plus, these aren't going to be shown registered. So we didn't see this as such a giant factor for us. I believe there's an option you can put in a birth date. I haven't.
Yeah, I'm kind of losing your audio, Danielle.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
That's much better.
So I'll kind of re-say what I said. So we're talking about verifying the age. These aren't going to be shown in the registered show, so we don't see age as a huge factor here. There's an option to put in the age if you do have that. Can you leave that blank, Caleb?
You can. Yep, you can leave that blank.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's really no incentive to make them, to be dishonest about the age because you can't show them, and so that's kind of is why we didn't feel like we needed to verify age, and because we wouldn't be able to unless we did the visual inspection process. So why? Let's jump down to that. Why are we not requiring? Why was the thought to not require a judge to visually inspect these? Bailey, as a judge, talks through that a little bit.
I mean, there's of course several of us that are willing to do it, but finding the time for all judges, we get paid to come to the shows. That's our job. Is we get paid a judging fee. That's not my full-time job, So, and I think most judges would also agree with that this extra visual inspection would take a lot of additional unnecessary time. I understand the concerns that are coming in. I've seen Photoshop be listed. I don't really see the point of trying to Photoshop one. I'm not sure that there's any giant significant benefit to trying to do that in this situation. But it just requires more resources to do those visual inspections.
And the secondary reason that I'll kind of comment on that is that we wanted this to be open to non-show goats, right? Like we wanted this to be available to your doe that has never been put on a chain. And yes, you could throw her on the trailer, but maybe someone doesn't typically even go to a show, but now they want to raise registered stock. These are some opportunities for that, it doesn't require you having to go into that. It would be a completely different story. I would feel completely different, as I'm sure the board would, the committee would, if these things were getting a high enough percentage to show or to actually get an actual registration paper.
Yes.
They are getting a percentage on the breed. Have a comment on Bridge the Gap. Why would this program attract the weather breeder? So the short term is, Tyler, you hit on this one.
I don't know that there really is a short term. For me, I think it's a long term thing. I think, and we talked at the beginning of building a foundation for this thing, and I think that's what we're trying to do right now. So these 12.5% native on appearance deals, you can breed it to your weather buck, Brandy, and then a junior member can take that 6 1/4 deal to the registered part of nationals in the hopes of getting them interested for what else is to come. Some of those other programs that may be tougher, maybe they can't afford a $15,000 weather that is going to be highly competitive. So those kids are going to have a little bit of an edge in that registered deal. Maybe we get them there and they see the incentive in the weather dam show where that 25%er it's a little easier to win that deal. And then maybe from there they come and say, well, I kind of like this registered thing. It's not necessarily what I thought it was. It's not the neighbor's goats I've seen in the field. These things are really nice. I'd like to go to Bailey, or I see Linda West and Randall in there. Maybe they go to Randall or Linda and use their buck next year. Maybe they buy one. Maybe 5 years down the road, they've got 100 registered does. I think that's where it is for me. Is that how it feels for you, Caleb?
Yeah, and I think a good comment that came in right at the right time of, get state fairs to include a registered weather class. Those discussions have been part of this committee, and we have some ideas, and I'll share them. And if you're passionate about it or get different things, this committee has some big ideas of trying to create some sanctioned show programs for weathers and for junior exhibitors at Kansas City, Louisville, Denver type shows, state fairs, that they could get some points for maybe just unregistered weathers, but significantly more points than to incentivize buying and showing a registered weather. And so as we look for new programs like that, those things long-term, Brandy, is where we're hoping to bridge the gap. I don't know that this program in and of itself does it, but as we talked about some of those long-term programs, this was kind of the beginning step to be able to get some of those involved and geared towards that, towards a longer-term vision. And so those are definitely some things. I will highlight one of the things that we'll start we talked about the sanctioned show. I talked about some new things we have going. If you haven't been on board meetings or Kyle Tate kind of spearheaded. We're still coming up with a name for it, but it's going to be similar to the ROV program that the Angus cattle do, that we're going to look at starting in 25 after nationals. So the show season will be kind of following nationals up to the next year. That, you know, if you're a breeder that goes to a Louisville and a Denver and a Fort Worth and Houston and some of these big national shows plus regional shows, that you can accumulate points through those, and there's going to be some additional awards that will give out for show doe of the year and show buck of the year. And so there's some things headed in that direction for our registered breeders that will hopefully piggyback and create some stuff to try to bridge that gap with our weather breeders eventually. Good discussion there. Who's going to visually inspect them? Again, we talked about that. The office staff right now is the proposal, with me being on that. We have discussed, and if the board ever directs or changes this, you know, as office staff, we work at the direction of the board. And so if members, if you feel really passionate that a committee or a set of judges that we need to develop a committee or a group of people to review these applications, reach out to your board of directors, share that with them. And if that's something the membership feels very strongly about, I think that's something the board's willing to listen to. And if it doesn't pass the approval process, there will be a reason given for that. Make sure that, you know, that the photo itself is acceptable. We hit on the color requirements. Again, we're just going to look for those board characteristics and specifically heavy influences of other things. And I saw the question, you know, why, you know, if it was a 50%er, you know, and they could register as a 50%er, why would we discriminate against them in this program? We are trying to make there be some standard and not just say anyone with any goat out there can get 12.5%, right? That was the purpose of it, was the pictures was to implement saying they needed to appear like a boar goat. And in all reality, right, if the world was an ideal place, some of these non-registered animals, we could pull a DNA test and it would tell us what percent boar they were. And it would take all of the subjectivity out of it. And I'd be very willing to bet most of these animals that we approve in this program have a truly higher true boar goat composition in them of higher than 12.5%. But obviously we can't do that. And that we're a registry, we're a pedigree. So we're concerned on those pedigree records and keeping that integrity in there. One thing that I will have, so let's see, next question that Danielle put together for us from Facebook. What will happen to the pictures? Will they be posted on iCompete or stored in-house? They are going to be posted on iCompete. Through this process, this actually did bring a benefit. I hope it's a benefit. You don't have to use it, but we actually have it now that you, as a member with a registered goat, you can go upload up to 2 pictures on any of your current owned animals in your iCompete herd book. And so that's a new thing that through this program, we worked with iCompete as we needed the ability to upload photos. We said, I bet there's a lot of members out there that would like to not just see their pedigree, but also see a picture of their goat along with that pedigree. And so not a requirement to do that, just completely optional deal. Then you can go ahead and submit photos on your regularly registered animals. I think there's some neat promotion opportunities and marketing opportunities with that for people to be able to search your animal, see a picture of them right there on iCompete.
I actually went in there today and played with that, and I think that's a great way. You know, it's real easy for me to lose photos on my computer or on my phone, and you search and search and search for just that one specific goat. But this is a nice one-way shop for all of your information on that animal now. Worried about Photoshop, submit a video. We had discussion on that. Concern is upload and just amount of data requirements. I know cloud storage has lots of different things, but you start talking about a lot of members putting it in. That was our concern there. Again, not being able to show,
right now, I'm going to be blunt right now, without DNA requirements, as a registry, we're kind of somewhat up to the honesty of our breeder on our pedigrees right now on registered stock. So we kind of are subjective to the same thing right now, unfortunately. We don't have any verification process through the registration process. Unfortunately, that's a cold, hard reality that I think the board and us as an association have to look at on how to continue to increase kind of integrity of that. Is that all right, Tyler, to way to state that?
I don't think this is the program where we're going to have to worry about that other than, I mean, honestly, people being sarcastic. I really just I don't see the need to do that in this situation. If it's obviously not a boar goat,
If we
breed it up
were
the other way.
if we were handing them a registration paper specifically, I do believe that would be a bigger incentive to do a video. But at this point, with it being a listing paper, we're not pulling those animals into our registry directly. So that's not a giant concern.
So gonna hit on a couple other ones that were kind of common onto here. How does this impact goats that are already registered out of a Boar X? This one is undecided. This is one that the board did not discuss, and this probably needs to be a rule. So I guess until there's a rule added, you won't be able to go back to it. This is something that'll be up for board discussion on whether you can change a pedigree from a Boar X to include your native on appearance to have her in your pedigree. So right now we're using it as a starting point and going forward. Tyler, is that a fair way to put it? And if you're a member that thinks, we've talked about there's some benefits of allowing members to go back and update to try to incentivize this program, is to try to get them to where they can do that, go back and change a pedigree, one generation change pedigree on a Boar X up to that. Kind of leads into the benefit of the NOA program. So we've talked a little bit about the registered wethers showing there. I think one of the big things going forward is it lets you track pedigree, right? Is now, instead of, if you do want to use an unregistered animal, and again, I'll emphasize this will still be an unregistered animal, rather than your pedigree stating Boar X as the dam, you can now come up with a name, and have, Tyler can have his herd prefix, in front of it, and it can show that name. And now we can track all of the progeny out of that dam, instead of it just being towards Boar X. The other thing that I'm going to hit on quickly on this is bred and owned for our junior division. Little confusion when this first got passed in February by some members that watched the meeting and saw this. The benefit is that now you can prove ownership, right? Right now, Boar X, you can list it as Boar X, and you can list yourself as the breeder. But now, by being native on appearance and you owning the dam, by having that listing paper, native on appearance paper, now it's easier to show that you're the breeder. I do want to say, though, that's not required. So bred and owned out of Boar X's will still be able to show at nationals as they have in the past. I would probably be honest in saying that it may be something that the board considers going forward. I know there's been discussion of that. So Aaron, in there, will there ever be a point where we can't use Boar X? I would say, I personally don't think there'll ever be a time that you can't use a Boar X ever. I don't know. I guess maybe I'm probably not the person to speak on that. I don't foresee taking that completely away, but maybe for bred and owned, that it could be potentially in the future. Again, it's not going to be for 2025, but down the road, I could see some benefit of making it be where you have to own the dam and have a paper on the dam to be able to show that it's a bred and owned.
I could be wrong.
Tyler, your toss as a board member on that, or Bailey as a breeder on that. Danielle.
I could be wrong, but I do believe in the past, I'm not sure how many years ago or how many board members ago it was, but I do believe at one point the bred and owned was not allowed to be a Boer X. I don't recall if or when that was changed. Tyler, do you recall
I don't.
that being the case?
I don't.
Sue, I'm trying to make sure I understand your question. Randall, I saw your question. I'm going to hit on it as well, so I'm not ignoring your question. I think it's a valid question. Just kind of going through in some that kind of go through with the document we've kind of prepared here to start with.
I would say on Sue's question, you'll be able to tell down the line so long as that native on appearance animal is still on the pedigree itself. Because it'll have NOA in front of that number on that future pedigree.
Yeah, so
go ahead, Bailey.
Caleb.
No, go ahead.
So on current registration papers, the way they're listed, it has the animal's name, and immediately following it has the registration number on every generation of the pedigree. So that NOA number should follow that animal's name. So as that goes on generation and so on, that NOA number will still be there as their quote unquote listing number.
Other benefits, I think we hit on most of them that we kind of felt like as a committee and why we came up with this. Again, some of this is kind of step one of hopefully some other programs down the road. Terry's question there. Terry, are you saying, right now a full blood could show as a weather dam. We don't have any rules against that. If you want to enter, and they can't show both ways. But if you wanted to show, and maybe you have a non-show correct full blood, you could still show, that in what we used to call commercial does, and now what we call the weather dam division. And so you can show any percentage from 0 to 100 in that division. We won't check papers at all. As far as and this is good clarification, I think Tyler, you messaged me earlier on to clarify. As far as the awards go at nationals for the highest percentage for year one, we actually did talk about the decision right now by the board is that the highest placing registered animal does have to be registered, not listing paper. So NOAs will not qualify for that. The highest placing registered animal will be 25% or greater.
Yep.
And that incentivizes those NOA animals to be bred up.
Yeah.
Okay. At probably one of our tougher ones here that we can all take. I'm going to hit on Aaron's before we get to this tough one. The commercial weather dam classes. Aaron, the board discussed that, and the board felt that for pretty much the last several years at both regional and national show, that it was a weather type judge judging those, and they were being judged as weather dams. They were just being called commercial does. Tyler, Bailey, do you want to hit on that? Tyler, from board perspective, when we had this discussion, Bailey as a judge and weather breeder, that was the discussion that I recall onto that, and why that was kind of changed was to actually reflect the way they were being judged. Tyler or Bailey, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bailey.
So with a large percentage of those animals being exhibited being milk tooth animals, it is a meat animal. It is a meat class. It's part of our market show. So that terminology being kind of converted over to weather dams, that's essentially what they are. They're market type animals they just pee out the other end, for a lack of a better way of saying it. So their purpose is to continue that style of goat. And that's certainly nothing to take away from the term commercial. But as we are talking about a show goat, I think the weather dam terminology certainly is used more nationwide, even outside of our association. So I think it's appropriate for us to stay on the same page as everyone.
Yeah, and to that point, I'm speaking as a non-certified boar goat judge, but someone who gets to judge market type shows across the country. When I judge a weather dam, if they call it weather dams or commercial does, I'm looking for good stock. I'm looking for, little clubby midget, slow growing, early maturing, bad structured ones. If we have good judge sorting them, those kind of don't get along. They need to have some functionality, some femininity, some structure. That's my opinion as someone that judges that type. So I think that there's a blend there that, hopefully that answers that, Aaron. Okay, hit Randall's before we get to this other tough one. Keep delaying it. Randall, Tyler, is it fine to share the upfront cost?
Say again.
Is it fine to just share what the cost was? Is that something that's fine for the members to know?
I think so.
So Randall, the cost for iCompete to build this program out, that again, I think has some added benefits, was a total of $4,800. That was board approved to do this. So that was board approved on the March meeting because that wasn't in the budget. And so before we went forward with that, that was board approved. And it could have either been an upfront fee or increase perpetually the monthly fee. And the board voted to pay for it up front so we didn't have an increased fee into once we had that fee paid off. The committee's goal is 100%, and the board's goal is 100% for this to pay for itself. I would definitely consider it a failed program if it does not. And so that's the full incentive, Randall, is for it to. We discussed actually on the finance committee the other night, and guess personal goal would be that we see enough of them to break even year one. I don't know that this makes the association year, but I think that'd be the goal is year one. And at the very latest year two to where it's not. But the goal would be year one that it pays for itself, and then it can be net new revenue going forward.
And that's total. That's not per year. That's a one-time.
Right. Yeah, one time, no additional costs going forward after that. So
we're talking about 240 native on appearance listings, and that's not even to speak of the potential revenue from the
weathers or offspring.
The weathers or the offspring in general.
Yeah. Hopefully memberships. Maybe that someone can now, hey, register. I heard I can, register this animal that I didn't have a reason to join ABGA because or ABGA because I didn't have any registered goats, but now I've got goats I already own that I can do it. So there's some hope that there'll be some trickle downs that will be hard to quantify into that. All right, let's get to this one, and then we'll hit any other questions and then get kind of close to wrapping up. Some people send their culls to the sale barns without papers because they don't deserve to reproduce. But now they can get papers on it just from getting it looked at in a picture. How do we go about that? So Tyler, Bailey, Danielle, I'm going to let any of you tackle it a little bit. The one comment I will have on that is that currently with Rule 206, they could go buy that sale barn goat and get a listing paper on it at 0%, but it could still be a listing paper. And so that's going to be my answer, is that they're still not going to get a registration paper. So if you're, if you charge extra for registration papers, I'll sell it to you for this much as a commercial animal or this much as a registration paper. You could still have that same differentiation for that. And be able to sell that because this is not a registration paper. But Tyler, Bailey, kind of add on to that.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I want to actually say to Callie over there, that actually makes us very happy to hear that. this program is actually allowing me to get started into the association. That is what we're hoping. And so that leads me into my point of view on that. Just because Caleb takes a goat to the sale barn and thinks it's not up to the quality that he wants to keep for his personal herd, doesn't mean that it's not going to be super productive and beneficial for my herd. I certainly hope that people aren't. I mean, I know what people take to some sale barns is their calls, and it's because their udder doesn't work anymore, or they've got an injury or whatever, and that's fine. But there's a lot more out there where people, and I talked to some people this week that's their business. They grow good goats and they take them to the sale barn, and that's where they sell them. That's their market. So we're just trying to allow people like Callie there. I don't know if that's where she's starting or not, but a lot of people started there.
Absolutely. If I could add, I think it's important to recognize that those animals at the sale barn, they may be registered, they may be commercial, they come from all different directions. If you're worried about them coming back into the registry or listing program here, if that animal is not of quality to continue reproducing, inevitably those animals are going to weed themselves out anyhow. So I don't think we need to focus so much on those cull animals because they're not going to stay around long term to cause more issues. But there's plenty of good ones there that certainly are deserving of being incorporated back in as well. Once you've sold that animal, I think it's kind of fair game. You've decided to let that animal leave, and it's up to the new buyer as to what they would like to do with that animal, and we need to be respectful of those decisions.
Yeah, I think good answers there. Couple more questions hit back on. Lauren Green, will weather dams be held to breed standards? The commercial doe division, previously when it was called commercial does, were never held to a breed standard, so the weather dams will follow the same thing. There is no breed standard for a non-registered. That's the way we're judging them, essentially, right, as a non-papered animal. And so there is, at that point, no breed standard.
Right, and we had mentioned earlier the weather dam show is not built for this directly, but if your registered animal has a call fault, it can technically still show in that.
Yeah. Terry, that's a tough question. Terry Taylor asked in terms of pro forma performance, what is the projected percentage of membership involvement to be deemed a success? Yeah, that's a tough one, Terry. I don't think we've discussed that. I think relative to it, bringing in new members and being a step towards bridging the gap long term and have very minimum pain for itself, are steps towards kind of minimal success. And then 3 to 5 years from now, looking back on hopefully some of the things that it can lead to on a positive side and some other opportunities, it'd be, hopefully build on that success. But tough question, Terry. I don't personally have a answer I can give directly to that.
I think the best answer to it is that there's an endless amount of opportunities that have already presented itself by just instating this with the photo edition capabilities, and hopefully there's many more things to come in the coming years to add on to this or enhance our breed and such.
Kind of last question I believe had on here, Tyler or Bailey, Danielle, if you've gotten any in on Messenger or text, we can hit on them. but to kind of wrap up, and then we'll leave it up to Facebook world here to put any chats in for us. Are NOA does eligible, native on appearance does eligible for Doe of Excellence? Right now, no, because the rule states Doe of Excellence is open to American percentage does and have to be a registered animal. And so again, a native on appearance is not. And so they would not be able to. A native on appearance offspring would be able to go towards a percentage like sire of merit. So another positive one. Personally, thank Throckmorton for making that positive comment. I always like to see some positivity there, and hope that there are some out there, and be able to do that. Let's see. So technically, yes to that question, Charlie, but it would be different numbers. So they would not be tied to each other. So technically, there could be a doe that was registered that you sold without papers that could now be in. Again, it wouldn't be double registered because the native on appearance would not be quote unquote registered. But they could have a listing paper on that animal, but we would have no way to know that those two animals are the same. There's no way, there would be no link across there for it to be double registered, to have that. Is that a fair explanation? That makes sense?
Well, once that animal is split up from those registration papers, it's pretty much not something that I would worry about necessarily anyways.
I would say from the tattooing aspect, if you're concerned about how to properly identify that animal, scrapey tags are allowed in this program. So versus trying to put a second tattoo or something of that nature in, you can utilize that scrapey tag. Or a microchip, right? Isn't that what we...
Right.
Yes, or microchip, yeah. So we, Tyler, Bailey, Danielle kind of hit on, have you guys got any more questions coming in from members as we try to wrap this up? Sue, the tattoo could trace back to a registered breeder based off their prefix, right? So that tattoo that's kind of towards that could certainly trace back to that. But they wouldn't, again, if they chose to use those tattoos on that animal, they certainly can. Scrape tag from original farm has to stay in. That is correct. So, it is against USDA. The USDA states it's against the law to remove a scrape tag. So that is also correct into there. But again, it wouldn't be a double, it wouldn't be that same animal. As Tyler was saying, I don't think the concern, they're separated from that registration paper. So that animal is not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to have access to the progeny that were originally registered or any of those things. It's like an animal without registration papers at that point. It's a completely different, it's starting out as an unregistered animal.
Right.
If I could add one thing, while we're kind of waiting on maybe some additional questions to come in, it was mentioned that we should get state fairs included in this registered weather class. If you are a heavy participant at your state fair, or you have the ability to reach out to those contacts at your particular state fair, bring it up to them. Bring it to their attention that this is a program that exists, and whether it be part of their ABGA show or part of their market show. I know some of those shows are on different weekends, depending which state fair you're at. But bring it to their attention, see if it's something that's maybe they were hoping to see in the future. So we don't, we can't get them to do it unless we talk to them about it.
Yeah, and Bailey, I just emphasize that a lot. You know that members out there, I'm happy to be in on those conversations, but grassroots level conversations are a great starting place, right? And connections. And so if you know who that superintendent or your fair manager is, and start those conversations, and would you be interested in this? And reach out to me, and I'd be happy to have those conversations and explain it and to try to help what we can from an ABGA standpoint, but that grassroots level discussion is very important for our members to be able to have. A couple of questions that came in. Currently, Grace, native on appearance, will not be considered eligible for anything. So, example of excellence, even if all points are won by the progeny. Right now, that is the case. I would say that is something that if there's a lot of people that feel strongly about, that they should be able to be allowed in and they get progeny points out of them, talk to a board member. That will require a rule change. Right now, the rule is very clear that they're not eligible. That would require a rule change. So right now, that is correct, Grace. Reach out to your board of directors if you think that should change and see what their thoughts are. And that's up to the board to decide. Blake, will DNA ever be required again? Man, that opens up a big can of worms there. Paige is none, so we're going to defer that, our DNA guru. Right now, the discussion that's always been happened on the DNA committee side of things is at the current cost, the DNA committee and board does not feel like it can do that with the cost of the SNP technology that we're using. If we get grants and different things, I think I would tell you maybe there's some discussion or some hope long-term to require it not on all animals, but back to some maybe bucks or ETs or different things. That discussion has been had. Right now, there is zero discussion about making it mandatory at the current price. If one of you guys have read Josh's message, I haven't had a chance to and can answer in while I'm reading.
I have. I think, and I appreciate where he's coming from. But at the same time, I think it's important to realize that different breeders are going to have a different set of standards that they cull their animals for. And at the end of the day, this isn't necessarily a registry situation as much as recognizing that that animal does show some sort of characteristic of the breed. And hopefully, say that animal is a cull animal to a majority of us. Hopefully, this program will allow them the opportunity to breed into different genetics that will improve that animal versus continuing down the pipeline of bad traits and whatnot. So, as much as I can see where he's coming from, I'm hopeful that people will make smart choices through this program to eliminate those cull issues.
And to touch on that a little bit, I think we talked about this a little earlier, but while those animals are allowed in, that's not what this program is designed around. There's a lot of controversy about the sale barn type application. Not everybody takes their calls there. Some of those goats are the best they've got, or their whole kid crop for that year. Some of these animals that will be native on appearance are just off somebody's farm, just nice commercial does. We don't want these guys to necessarily go in and buy all your calls, because that's starting them off on the wrong foot.
Right.
Yeah, and my hope is our hope. We there's concerns with every program, and there's not a perfect probably deal out there. You could probably go through every rule and every part of our whole association and have pros and cons on where it has some issues in it. We hope this program is one that the benefits and the opportunities outweigh the negatives. It was the intention of the committee and the intention of the board when it got approved. I appreciate everyone being on. We'll give it just another minute or two. We had pretty good numbers on here. Again, there was lots of comments on Facebook, so I hope a lot of the people that shared and commented on Facebook were on here. If you weren't on at the beginning, we know that Bailey was a keyboard warrior trying to answer some of these questions through, and she did it with such a smile on her face while she was answering those the last 3 weeks. She just her camera froze her from the very beginning with that smile on her face right here the whole time. So, but if you have continued questions, continue to reach out to your board of directors, people on this committee. Always happy to visit with members myself. That's an enjoyable part of my day when members call. So, last question, Aaron, that's a good one. It doesn't have to be the last one. How does it live up to the mission of our 501c5 of improving the Boerboel breed? I think there's some really good animals out there that would qualify for this program that don't have a registration paper. So I think there are some animals that can provide different stock in, and the long term, I guess the part of the answer on that, Aaron, would be, I think personally, I'd feel different about that question if you weren't able to register an animal out of a Boer X as is, or if you weren't able to breed your full blood buck to a dairy goat and still registered as a 50%. So I don't think this is watering it down, in my personal opinion, because of any of those things. I think that we're going to have animals that can maybe increase our genetic pool for some breeders. And again, there'll be lots of breeders probably out there that have no interest in this program. But I think there will be some that do have an interest and take advantage of it. And so that is would be my response to that, Aaron, is that hopefully there are some good animals that can be added into this to the genetic pool and get some animals in and pedigreed and be able to not registered, but have a record of pedigree on them to be able to track going forward.
In regards to the last part of that, culls being brought back in, that's certainly not the intention. And I know we keep continuing to say that. Our registered stock have culls and faults and DQs and things that we sort through on a day-to-day basis. This program is going to have to do the same thing. And that's breeders and owners that have to take those things seriously. And we hope that everyone is cautious as they enter these programs and try to do what's best for the breed as a whole, not just for their own self benefit.
Karen, it will never trace back. There will be no connection of a native on appearance animal back to an original breeder if someone buys it. There will be no way for them to put you as a breeder. That's why we're taking that off of the NOA certificate, is so that way someone can't list someone else as the breeder on these. The breeder is going to be left blank. So there will be no way that your name would ever be tied to it. A couple there, good questions keep coming in. Is it a starting point to allow purebred? I'm not laughing because it's a bad question. I'm laughing because that's a whole nother can of worms. That's probably a different discussion. There was a committee proposal in on purebreds up to full bloods that was tabled. It is something that the board, I know, is still has kicked around. Right now, it is not in on anything with that. That is a different thing. So this I don't think this wasn't intended to be a starting point to that, Tyler, correct? To answer Francis' question.
No,
that was not,
it doesn't have anything to do with the Purebred Breed Up program.
Yeah, so different things. I'll answer Karen's, then you guys can jump in on Joetta's and Aaron's as they do that. Karen, there could be that connection as far as if they listed that as the ID. However, the proper ID on that is going to be the state and premise number, right? So it's not going to state you as a breeder. I would have to try to go look that up somewhere to try to, it's not going to list you as a breeder. Like, I guess technically, yes, that could be a link back to you, but it's not going to, say Sparks Farms XXX as the tag number. The proper scrapey tag that we would require would be the true premise ID from that. So yes, technically that could link them back to you. No different than if someone went and bought that animal out of the sale barn, that scrapey tag stays with them the same way. Like you will always, when you put your scrapey tag in an animal, you will always be linked to that animal. If you guys want to hit on Aaron or Joetta's, I hadn't read them yet.
I wish I knew more about the South African program to be able to hit on that more. I know she's specifically talking about their requirement for visual inspection versus our photo route. They're also putting those animals straight into the registry, from my understanding, and we are not. So we're a generation away from that. That's why that visual inspection has become a photo instead for this program.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Bailey. From my understanding, South African one, I don't understand at all, but just reading some comments, Joetta, I would say that go back to the fact that there's animals that are, there could be full blood animals currently registered in our, or I'm sure there are full blood animals registered in our herd book that would not pass a visual inspection to be correct to breed standard. And so this isn't, it's not a requirement to be a full blood or a purebred or a percentage right now to have a visual inspection. And so to require a listing paper to have a visual inspection is where we felt like it wasn't necessary, is my response to that. We're getting some good Facebook comments back here. So
as far as genetic diversity, yes, they do all derive from the same imports, but I think we've all gone different directions. As a registered group of people, we went down one path, and as a market geared set of people, they've gone down a different path genetically, as far as not to necessarily name drop good or bad, but on the high end of the registered world, you're going to see Ruger's name a lot. Versus on the market side, there's other bucks that are going to be more common. Yes, it's still derived from the same point, but that variety is different. And I personally feel like it's going to allow for different traits, because that we're not going to be inbreeding as much as we are line breeding. Tyler, do you have something to add to that may make that sound a little easier on the ears?
What I'll add, Bailey, is I'll give it an example within other registry bases across species. I think that I'll take Angus cattle as an example. If you're familiar at all with Angus cattle, there is a very a group of cattle that are very, very number and carcass driven. And there's a set of cattle that are very show ring driven. And while they are the exact same breed, 100% registered Angus, you could get some lines within the exact same breed of Angus cattle that would almost be probably similar to hybrid vigor of outcrossing to another breed because they're genetic. I mean, it is not the same. I'm not trying to say that. Obviously, it's not going to be the same as outcrossing to a different breed in a crossbred. But I think that kind of the same thing that Bailey was explaining is that would be my correlation is other species of livestock have a similar thing. On the scrapey ID thing, the thing that I will tell you guys is that I raise sheep. Mine says my name on it as well, but that's not my scrapey number. You can put whatever you want on your tag. That's not a scrapey ID tag. That's not a scrapey ID number. My scrapey ID doesn't start with Boardman. It starts with TX and then has a premise ID on it. And so if it is an official scrapey tag, the one that you're saying has the number on the inside and mine's the same way, that's the number that they would need to use as the ID. And so if they try to, and I actually had, this is a good point. Those that are bringing up this, I had not set that as a rule to the staff to make sure that was in there. So now it's a good opportunity. I'll go back and train my staff that when they review the application process, if there's a breeder's name listed as the ID or anything on there, we'll have them reach out to the member and say, that's not the ID that we can't use that ID. We have to have just the premise ID.
Caleb, I had a question come in here that I would like us to talk about a little. This member says, I'm getting a lot of text that it appears the program jumps over and leaves the purebred people behind. Care to speak to that? So what I would say to that would be that I would disagree. We're not trying to take anything away from the purebreds. We're actually trying to get more people into the registry to breed up to that point, I would say. You're going to have some people with the way that it stands right now that are going to breed those percentages back down to keep them in percentage status. But I would say this is maybe where that purebred breed up thing could eventually tie in. Is it gives more people incentive to come in, and then maybe they would breed up. But no, I don't believe that it takes away from that. I think that would be their end goal, is to make them purebreds.
Yeah. Myers, I guess, again, going back, I don't, from my perspective, see how this takes anything further away than what a Boar X. Anyone can go in and register as a Boar X right now. This allows you to track pedigree out of a specific doe instead of, if you have 10 Boar X's in your flock or in your goat herd that you're trying to breed up to make percentages, they all say Boar X on it now. You could make those 10 does native on appearances, and now you can track specifically progeny back to specific does. There was one on the how will photos be managed and tracked. Again, we are going to have to rely on the integrity of the submitting member on that, because they can't show it because it's not going into the registry base. That is where we felt like a photo and not a video or a visual inspection was acceptable to do it. Rue Ranch, it was discussed. Right now, the process is a staff member. The staff will be trained on this, and they will get to give the approval or denial, and then I will train them on that as executive director. If you believe that should be changed and are strongly passionate about a judge or some type of committee reviewing these, get a hold of a board member and share that with them, and that can be discussed.
I think that's something we're hopeful to incorporate, right? As far as Tammy's question, in the future, a program that could become a priority it may take some time. I know we're going to have to get the DNA program going and allow enough information to be stored before those EPDs per se could become helpful. But I think we have to start somewhere. And hopefully this is opening a few of those doors towards programs like that.
Yeah, I'd agree 100% with that. I think good comment. To Sue's, I mean, that was kind of the committee's thoughts, is different involvement, is, you know, we're trying to open doors to maybe new people. We're not trying to, you know, water down the breed. We're not trying, you know, that wasn't the committee or the board's decision to approve these things. That's why some of the stipulations are put in place on why it is. That's why they're not getting a registration paper. That's why they can't show. All of those things are to preserve all of the hard work that members have done for years and years to have full bloods, purebreds, percentages, and not let someone just go in and jump in and go win the national percentage show with a doe that doesn't have pedigreed stock behind them. So I think we're 100% trying to protect that while opening the door for people that have different goals.
I guess since we've maybe had a few newer people jump on here, I just want to emphasize again, and maybe I don't need to, but this is not a requirement. This is just another tool that you can use if you'd like to.
Karen Randall had asked this question earlier. It was a one-time $4,800 cost. And then no additional cost going forward from a software standpoint. Obviously, it will take some time for staff to review. We felt like we're at a staffing point that we don't expect any extra labor to be required. That's not already in the budget. Josh, I'm not fully understanding that statement. If you want to elaborate, or Bailey or Tyler.
I'm with you on that. If he could elaborate a little more, that'd be cool. I would like to say to that though, we're not trying to take away from the integrity of the breed or water down anything. And kind of one of the examples that we have talked about within the committee is, I mean, if I really want to, and I'm not trying to talk bad about a crossbred animal because I love them. Let me say that first, but I can take a pygmy and breed it to a full blood, and I got a 50%er. I can take that 50%er and breed it to another pygmy, and now I've got a 25%er. And as long as she conforms to the standards, I can walk her in the show ring. This isn't what we want for this program. What we want for this program is to incorporate boar-like boar goats in appearance that, and I guess I should elaborate a little bit more on that. That doe could walk into the show ring, but she will, when she's 75% pygmy, she's probably going to have a lot more pygmy appearance. That doe can still be in our registry regardless of if she conforms to the standards. And this isn't that. We want these to look like boar goats and to be able to let these people build off of that.
Mandy, I think that's one of the benefits of the program, you know, just being able to, this gives you a chance to actually track pedigrees back to animals on that, and to specific dams. As we'll give it just another, you know, we'll keep answering questions as long as people have them. Timothy, I don't know if it wasn't on the agenda to update it every single month. It will be a separate classification. So the board will, this will be a different line item on our financial statements going forward, starting in April, is that we will have a separate chart of account on our financial statements. And so if it's not updated as a member, or if it's not updated to the membership live, Timothy, reach out to your board of director and they'll have the finance they've been generated that it has generated at any point going forward.
As far as Lauren's comment, shouldn't they have to meet DEQ standards? We hope that they meet our standards. We hope that they will not have any DQs, but there's plenty of registered goats out there that don't meet our standard as far as disqualifications. So to require an animal that's not even gaining a registration paper to fully follow our standards would be a little bit null and void. Correct.
Caleb.
Oh, did we lose Caleb? Oh no.
Oh boy.
We're on our own, guys.
All right.
Tyler, do you want to take that top one?
There's no requirement for visual inspection.
The way I'm reading his question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Throckmorton's there. Yeah, there's no way to ensure that all those animals that are registered every day are going to meet the breed standards. We do that to keep them out of the show ring. Like if they're not gonna meet the standard we don't want them to show, that doesn't necessarily mean that we aren't going to breed them or keep them in our.
Yep.
And that's a tough topic, honestly. I mean, there's lots of breeders out there that would say if your animal doesn't meet the standard that you should call it, but I'd say the reality is that a lot of the people are breeding those animals and trying to make them better.
As a breeder / judge, that's certainly something that we're cautious with, especially when we're going to sell animals and market them. We want to make sure we're transparent about those things, but I'm not going to say that every goat on our farm is. Oh, did I lose you?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get Caleb back on
you're
here.
Good.
You guys want to?
Yep, Lauren, integrity, that's the main thing. Everybody's just got to have good integrity about things. And there he is.
Yeah, I'm back on. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I kind of missed out, so you guys tell me where we're at, and we've been on for Tyler. Maybe I guess we were a little naive about this program when we talked about setting this Facebook Live up about a week ago. I think Tyler and I thought we'll jump on, try to keep it short for people to not have these long Facebook Lives, and we'll be on and off in 20 minutes. And we made the post on Monday, and 300 and some comments later, I think we knew this was going to be a long one, but that's the purpose of these. Facebook Lives, we're going to continue to try to do these with some different programs. And so, we want transparency out to the members. I want that as executive director. And as we outline new programs and new opportunities, we'll get on and discuss them on here and answer questions and get board of directors on here. That's just something that we're wanting to do, that I want to push for. And so thanks for sticking with us, a bunch of you, for coming on 2 hours now.
Rue, I think we're that's one of the big things of this is we are hoping that we can market to the regular commercial type breeders. We actually seen earlier on, I know you're getting on a little later, but we seen earlier on in the comments there was a young lady that had bought a couple goats from a commercial type breeder. Not weather type stuff, but just commercial animals. And that's her way into the association. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that is exactly the type of benefit that we would like to see from that avenue.
Yeah, I'll expand on that a little bit. That I don't know that maybe this program even is the exact one that will go towards that, but I, as executive director, and the board has directed me to try to find ways to start to do that, to increase things. I think on the sheep side of things, I just saw some stuff yesterday, and usually sheep and goats follow along, that with some of the tariffs and some of the restrictions of going on right now, there may be a really good opportunity for increased, that there may be, closing down some things on importation of frozen carcasses and different things from a true meat market side of things. And so, I'm optimistic that there's some things headed in the right direction to rejuvenate that. The market's great, obviously, on that side of things. There's other opportunities that we're looking forward to towards that. To me, that's where I think the board goat's a unique thing, because it can cater to a lot of different people. And I think that as an association, my hope is that we're encompassing of all of those. And that's going to make the strongest one. In my opinion, I'm gonna say a 4-legged stool, but we could go down to 3 if we wanted to lump one of these legs up into the other 3 categories, but is a lot stronger than a 1-legged stool. And the weather market, the true commercial market, and the purebred market are 3 different legs of the stool that can support this association if we cater different programs to all of them. My 4th leg of that is the junior program, and continue to find ways for juniors to get involved, and I think to help to grow the association. So that's, getting into a little different topic of some visions of mine as executive director here. But, I think that's the goal of mine for long-term stability of the association, is we have to find opportunities for different sectors. Go back to the Angus Association, National Swine Registry, some of what Hereford Association, what I would argue some of the more successful livestock associations out there. They kind of take that approach that they cater to commercial breeders, to juniors, to the show ring, to seed stock. There's different opportunities for different breeders with different goals. And I'm not going to name any names of associations that haven't been successful across different breeds. But there's some breed associations that get really focused on only one leg of that, and sometimes it's their demise. Catherine, it was possible now, right? You could have taken just a commercial animal and taken it to a full blood and done it. This just gives you a chance to track pedigrees through those initial commercial does that you'd have. And the incentive is you get a little extra bonus on the percentages. That's, again, it is possible without it. We're just trying to incentivize it. And I'll emphasize again that we have some visions down the road with some incentive programs on the show ring side for wethers, even within the commercial doe side, perhaps on registering some things on there's some different options that this opens the doors up to.
I'd like to add to that, kind of along with what you just said, and what Rue Ranch is asking as far as programs for marketing. Right now, the show ring is our biggest marketing tool, or at least from a majority perspective from what I've seen. So I think the fact that we're opening up these programs within the show ring, hopefully that itself is a nice tool for marketing this program towards commercial breeders, because it's going to give them a different avenue to sell their stock to. And hopefully bring an additional value to some of those animals versus sending them directly to sale barns or meat markets in specific.
Well, and I would add to that question as well. The way that I think that we market to it is your feed mills, your sale barns, obviously, your county fairs, just your local breeders that you talk to every now and then, your vet, like just the people in your community. If we can make these kind of people aware of it, those are the people, like these county fair guys that have 6 goats, and they're not weather bred goats. They're just goats, and that's what they take to the county fair. And if you go market this or talk about this with those kind of people, I think those are members that could be great assets to this deal, that we don't even know about, or that don't know about us.
I guess one more thing I'd like to add, as people might still be hanging out, watching and listening, is if you have specific concerns about parts of this program, reach out to your director and voice those things so that we know kind of where membership is sitting with this. So if there's adjustments that need to be made to the program through time, we can do that in a positive way going forward.
Yeah, I think well stated, Bailey. I think comments have kind of slowed down. I think we're past 10 o'clock for Tyler and the East Coast. Bailey, are you East?
Oh,
zone,
yes, I'm still on Eastern.
So, Danielle, you're Central, right?
Yeah, I'm Central time.
But we appreciate everyone jumping on. Again, I think some comments that were in on there earlier, I'll emphasize is no requirements, not a program that you have to do, but hopefully it opens the doors to some new people. Yeah, Callie, there's contacts on there. Feel free to reach out to myself. As executive director, I'll be listed on the staff, and we'll be happy to point you in the right direction to get you to join as a member of ABGA and get those goats registered in under this program. And so really appreciate you jumping on, and glad you saw this, somehow linked into this through all probably the sharing on Facebook and got to that. So. Guys, if you guys have anything else, if not, I think let's wrap it up for the night, and we'll go. I've got little kids I think are in bed already, but go kiss goodnight, and I can hear my sheep bawling out in the background in the barn, so I've got some hungry critters to go take care of. So.
I've got the same. We had a new set of babies right before this meeting, so I'm sure they'll be happy to see me. Thank you for orchestrating this, Caleb, and and everyone. And I'm still available for questions if somebody wants to private message any of us. Maybe you just didn't feel like being on here publicly. We're happy to try to get you through this.
All right. Thank you guys for positive comments, challenging questions. That's how I think as an association, we got to grow and push and challenge each other and go with it. So I'm gonna hit end stream. Good night to everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.